both of us on the screen here, from AmpiFire. And today we're going to be discussing the major changes in traffic due to AI and what it means about the biggest and best traffic source out there, right? So again, in case anyone just missed that, so I'm going to repeat it real quick. This is Jay Cruz. I'm with Chris Munch here today from AmpiFire, discussing the major changes in traffic due to AI and what it means about the biggest and best traffic source out there, which is, of course, Google. And so Chris is here. So Chris has actually driven millions upon millions of visitors. And of course, that leads to sales over the years, right? I think well over 100 million now, which is pretty impressive. Think about it, over the last decade. And we're here to help you do exactly the same thing. So we're going to be discussing that and a lot more here today. So you can ultimately sell more stuff. You can make more money, right? So Chris, can you hear me? Are you there?
I can hear you, yeah. Happy to be here. So yeah,
Nice, nice,
first time
nice.
we've done a YouTube live, but let's jump in.
Yeah, first time. So if it's a little bit, we'll get there. It's all good. But so Chris, look, I've got lots of really important questions for you here today. All right. So I hope you're ready because I've come prepared. And the way we're going to run through this is just knock these out, have a nice discussion, and hopefully you guys can take something away to make more money and drive more traffic. Right. That's the idea. So number one, Chris, if you're ready, right off the bat, I mean, we've already touched on this, but what is the best source of traffic for most businesses? Is it Google? Is it Facebook, TikTok, or something else? And why?
So this is an interesting question, right? So it's something that's debated a lot. And so, the way to look at this is, where is the money made, right? So where is most of the money made when it comes to online traffic? So like you reverse engineer it, okay? And so I like to do this when I'm figuring out business problems, right? Figuring out how to, grow profits, this sort of thing, is you got to do this analysis. So where do people where do people get their sales from? What could clue you into that? Which is going to be, where do they spend their money? Okay. So the place where they spend the most money, it's not Facebook, it's not TikTok ads, right? It's not the social media ads. Um, it's Google, right? So when you look at, say, what Amazon does, what Walmart does, what all of the big brands are doing, is the biggest spend that they make is on Google. And also when you look into their traffic, like, where's their biggest source of traffic, right? For many of the big brands, right, it's obviously they've got branded traffic already coming in. But after that, the biggest source of traffic for them is Google. And there's an extra level to this. It's like, so they're spending more, there's more traffic there. When you go look at, like, what are the most popular sites, where is all the traffic going? Google is the number one website, right? It's the highest traffic website in the world, right? And definitely in the US. And so not only does it have a huge amount of traffic, you also have to think about, well, what is that traffic? How does it compare to, like, other places, right? So interestingly, say on Facebook, on YouTube, on TikTok, on Instagram, people aren't looking for something specific, right? If they buy something or they respond to an ad, it's because they see something and then they have a quick reaction to that and they check out the ad. But we all know that when we're browsing through TikTok, as soon as we see an ad, it's like you tend to just, ignore it and try and get past it, right? Because it's interrupting what you're already doing. Whereas on Google, people are looking for something specific, right? They're typing something in. It's either they're researching a product, they're researching a problem to solve, they're looking for somewhere to go eat, right? But they're looking for something specific. So the quality of the traffic is just far, far superior. So it's like, you can make money on Google with 10 visitors. You can make more money with like 10 visitors, 50 visitors from Google than you might do with, say, thousands upon thousands of visitors from social media. And so I think, the evidence is very clear that Google is the best source of traffic for the majority of businesses out there.
Nice, definitive. I like it. You answered a lot of questions without me even having to interrupt. No, I like that. That makes a lot of sense. So I guess that leads me into my next question, which is, so obviously Google is a search engine. The whole idea is to provide a solution for people, right? I guess that's the main thing. I don't know if you'd agree with that, but is it still going to be the best search engine? And what about AI and what part does that have to play when it comes to solutions? Because we've seen a lot of that with with ChatGPT, for instance, and lots of other, AI tools out there?
Yeah, so that's a pretty interesting question. So, Bing and ChatGPT or Microsoft and ChatGPT, they are working together, right? And so Bing is using all of Chat GPT technology inside of its search engine. They were the first company to add AI into their search engine. And, you know, what's actually happened is Bing has started to get a little bit of market share back from Google. Okay. And so it's about 10 to 20% of traffic, more towards the 10% of traffic coming from Bing, and overall, about when we look at our own sites and our client sites, it's about 20% of non-Google traffic that comes from search, right? So 80% of search traffic comes from Google, 20% from other places, right? Of which that is Bing. And the reason why Google remains so popular is it makes a ton of money. Its advertising program is very, very effective. They have the best data, they have the best technology. And arguably up until recently, they had certainly the best search engine results. More recently, they've come under a bit of pressure to say that their search engine results aren't as good. Bing's are starting to be a little bit better. And so that's why Bing has gained a little bit of market share, but in the big picture, it's a small amount, but it's still significant, and it's the first time that it's happened. But it's hard to see, like, at this point, with the exceptional data and just how good Google is at being able to work out search engine results, and their technology is overall like far superior, even if they might not be using it in the right way right now. Google's going to stay the number one. Will AI significantly change that? Will AI replace search, where it's like you ask a question to your phone and then it gives you the answer, so you don't need to search Google anymore? That could happen, say, over 10, 20 years. I don't see that happening anytime soon. And even in the longer term, I don't think people are going to have a conversation with AI, right? Because it's quicker to search and get results. So it's quicker still to type a question. So search is still going to be, typing based. It's not going to be conversational based because it's quicker to read something. Even if you ask the question in voice, you're going to read, it's going to be faster to read most of the answers. So, and the way that Google works is, and the way that we search, it's come about that way for a reason, because it's something that people really like to do. And so if you look at, say, the AI interface like ChatGPT, it's way more clunky in comparison, right? And even if it gets better, and even if it becomes like very, very smooth to kind of have a conversation, ask questions that way, and AI is, generating the answers, where do those answers come from, right? Do you know where is it getting the answers from?
Well, I guess Google, maybe.
So with ChatGPT, it certainly uses Bing. So it has certain knowledge
Oh,
of
okay. Okay,
things,
I got
right?
you.
So you can ask it, say, what's the distance to the moon, and it already knows that, it's already in its database. But for more live information, or where it needs to go out and do some research, right, then it's going to go to a search engine. So it just goes
Of
to
course.
Bing, looks at the top 10, reads the pages, and then essentially summarizes it for you. And as well as maybe combining that with some of its knowledge. But in the end, it's still going back to the search engine. And so whether you're showing up, your answer is showing up in the search engine, whether it's showing up in an AI answer, right? You still want your stuff to be chosen, to be recommended. And so it still kind of comes back to the same thing. It's, where's the AI getting this info? It's getting it from the search engines. If you're publishing content, then it's going to find its way back into AI anyway. So even if it does all change, it doesn't really change the strategy all that much. And so this kind of happened and has been happening for a long time. Whereas if you type a question into Google, then quite often it gives you an answer, right? You don't even need to go to a web page.
Yeah.
So if you search for, the time zone in another place, you get an answer. But even if you ask a question, you have like what's called a featured snippet, it gives you an answer. And the AI answer is just really a bigger featured snippet, right? So it's not anything different to what Google has already been doing. Is Google tries to answer the query before you click through to a website. They've been doing that for a long, long time. But still, right, most of the traffic still comes from Google, right? So Google is still the biggest traffic source, even though it's been doing this stuff for years. So even though they try and keep more of the traffic to themselves, people still go and visit websites, do their research, and so on. So in reality, is it going to change that much? Unlikely, like in the short term, maybe longer term, it's harder to predict, but
Yeah.
that's far off. It's not going to be, you're not going to be thinking now, like, what am I going to do in 10 years? You're not optimizing for 10 years time. And in the end, it's probably going to be quite similar anyway.
Interesting. A really quick question, just for my benefit more than anything else, right? Is why Bing? Why does it go for Bing? I don't understand. I never got that. Did you mention Bing?
So why does ChatGPT go for?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because Microsoft put
Oh,
billions.
because they loaded some cash into it.
Yeah,
Right,
so
of
they
course.
basically bought ChatGPT. It's like
Right,
a
right, right.
profit thing. I
Hmm.
think it's something like they can only get 100 times their investment back, and then they can make no more money from it. So it's kind of
So they
limited
just put
profit,
in what
let's
they
say.
need. Yeah.
This
Interesting.
is the reason Elon Musk left OpenAI because it started becoming commercial. And so
Yeah.
that's why you've got this really tight relationship. So OpenAI, ChatGPT is basically
Right. Interesting. Well, this is why I always come to you for stuff like this, right? It's crazy. I'm like too busy trying to do all the other stuff we're trying to do in the business. But no, thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, so moving on swiftly because we haven't got too much time here today, and I want to get through as many of these as we can. So the next question is, and this is a good one, is Google traffic still worth it? Or is it too hard? Right? In other words, how far can people take it and how much money can you actually make uh through Google traffic?
Yeah, so I mean, it's quite surprising that so few people go after Google traffic. And so you mainly, I mean, when you look at the bigger brands, the bigger companies, they all go in hard on Google traffic. But
Mhm.
then when you look at smaller businesses, they tend to do a lot less on Google traffic. And so, it confused me for a while. Is like, why is Google the biggest traffic source? Why when it's the highest quality that so many businesses just overlook? And it's an interesting question, right? And
Oh yeah,
I'd be, I'd
massively.
be, I'd wonder what your thoughts are. Like, why do you think that people don't go after the Google traffic when you realize it's the biggest and the best source of traffic? What do you think's stopping them?
Well, I think from my experience, it's because it is too difficult. It's very technical. You need to know a lot about it. You need to really, be an expert to a degree. So it's not the barrier to
And
entry
that's
is too low,
what,
too high,
yeah,
sorry, I'd say.
and that's what a lot of people think. And why do they think that? It's because of things like technical SEO audits, so search engine optimization, SEO.
Yeah.
You have experts in the field, and they tend to be very, very technical, and they love algorithms. They love like the computer science behind how Google works. And
Yeah.
behind how Google works is some of the most advanced, computer science, AI, in the world, right? So it is genuinely very, very complicated. However, no one actually really knows how it works. Even they say that people inside of Google don't really fully understand it. It's got so big and complicated. It's
Mm.
kind of like they're just playing around, tweaking it and seeing what comes out the other end, but they don't fully even understand it because it's so big. There's so many people involved. And so, yeah, on one side, it is really complicated. And so the experts speak in all of this complicated language, right? But the same is true for Facebook ads. Behind Facebook, right? Social media, behind the TikTok algorithm, like, companies cannot reverse the TikTok algorithm to, overthrow TikTok as a leader. Like Facebook was unable to do that. They had to buy Instagram, to compete in that field. So the technology behind all of these different platforms is really complicated, but the perception of Google is that it's more complicated than the others, but it's not, right? They're all equally as complicated. But the thing is, people get social media because we go on social media, we press a button and we post it and we go, well, if my post is interesting, it's going to be seen by more people.
Yeah.
If my ad is engaging and I connect it with the right audience, then I've got a good chance of being successful. But they can't make that same simple sentence about Google, right? Because
Mm.
it's like being told like, oh, it's meta tags, it's keyword density, it's all of these complicated things. And in the end, it's like, no, those things are just part of the algorithm trying to figure out the same thing like Facebook does, the
Mm.
same thing like TikTok does. What is the good content that we should show? That's it. And so really all it's about is creating good content and promoting it, just exactly like social media. It's just done in a different way. So in reality, it's like just post more stuff and promote it and share it. It's a different mechanism for how you do it, but it's still, it's just as complicated or just as simple as social media. There's really no no strikingly there's nothing strikingly different in the complexity or the difficulty or even necessarily the time frame, right? People think social media is like very quick, but if you try to grow a following on social media and you're posting and it's like no one's following you, right? You know that it can also take a really long time, right? And so the same is true on all platforms. If you're not sure what you're doing, it takes much longer, and things take time in general, right?
Interesting.
So in the end, it's like it's no more complicated. But that's it's a big reason why people are scared of it, is just because they don't understand it. And they don't, because they just don't get how it works. But it's
Okay.
just as simple. And there's a couple of other reasons, right? So social media is really popular as a way to get traffic because people are kind of exposed to this influencer world, right? And so the things which you see when you're on Facebook, when you're on TikTok,
Mhm.
is influencers, and they've got lots of followers. So you think, well, me or my company also needs the same thing, right? And so they focus on that, but then similarly, all those companies are all over Google, getting tons of Google traffic, right? And so the big brands are just, getting so much Google traffic, but people forget that, right? And that kind of just comes back to like the influencer mindset as well. The other thing is like it ties in with the same thing. The influencer thing is kind of like exciting. People get it, right? Whereas ranking high in Google is not so cool, right? It's like if you say, "Hey, I got like 10,000 followers on Instagram," or "My company's got 10,000 followers on Instagram," people think, "Oh, like you must be doing something cool." So the ego comes into it, right? Whereas if you say, "Hey, I'm getting tons of Google traffic," they're like, "Okay, I don't kind of get that, but good for
Mhm.
you," right? So that falls into it as well. So just these little different things like make the difference, and also it's to do with laziness, right? In some way. So if you're a business, you probably set up a Facebook page because it's quick and easy because you already have a Facebook profile. You already know what to do. So simple, so easy,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then when you make a post, then there's a little boost button, right? That says boost. And then Facebook says, give me some cash and I'll show you to more people. And it's like, okay, a kid can do that, right? So a kid can advertise on Facebook very, very quickly, right? It's
Mhm.
just so simple. Whereas Google, what do you have to do? Well, it's like, well, you're going to have to have a website first, right? Then you're going to have to think about what content you post to the website, and then you have to think about how you promote it, right? So you have to learn a couple of things first before you can do it. But then ultimately, in the long run, it's no more difficult because when you really advertise on Facebook and you get into it, or TikTok or any other platform, is you realize actually this is really complicated and it's difficult and I have to get really good at this stuff. And it's similar with Google as well. It's like there's skills and stuff to learn. But even with Google, you can learn to post extremely quickly. You can learn to get traffic very, very quickly, just like you can do on social media. So, in the end, it's just a lot of misconceptions about how difficult Google is, or just being simply unaware, like where to get started. And it's a shame because businesses miss out on a ton of traffic as a result.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was gonna say, so it is way simpler than the experts make out, right? I mean, you've kind of summed it up. And also, I mean, you've answered a lot of questions there, which was awesome because it saved me asking why the hell people don't go after Google traffic then. But you've explained that, right? A few of the things you said about people being lazy, overly reliant on social media, low barrier to entry, right? And the ego stuff was interesting as well, for sure. I think we can all relate to that. So, okay, interesting. So yeah, it's way simpler than the experts make out. Could you summarize that then, and why you think that's the case? Just real quick. So,
So why it's simpler? So like on social media, if you're trying to run ads, right, you've got to learn what audiences to target, you've got to learn how to optimize your ads, you've got to learn how to engage people, you've got to learn copywriting, all of these different things. So there's a vast array of skills which you need to know, right?
agreed.
Um, And so social media is difficult. And then in Google, it's the same thing. You have to learn how to post, what to post, how to target the audience, and what you do to target the audience, which is actually just you put the keywords in the title of what people would look for. It's really that simple. So what you put in the title is what you really stand a chance of ranking for, like on the most simplest level. So if you write a post, say, about, say, how to get Google traffic, you've got a chance of ranking for the term like how to get Google traffic. You have it in the title, right? And so it's different, but there's simple things you can do on social media to get attention and people understand them, and there's simple things you can do with Google to get attention. And so if you don't get too caught up in trying to explain the algorithm and trying to get scientific,
Mm.
um, and I think like trying to sound smart, right? Then you can just break these things down into simple things. So for Google, you know, post a lot of content. The more content you post, the more things you can rank for, right? So every post you make, every page that you make online, can rank for something in Google. And so in most businesses, there's just be thousands of questions that people ask, thousands of topics, lots of different products or ways that you can use the products, or lots of different problems being solved. It's rare you come across a business where there's not like at least 1,000 topics, right? And quite often it's in the tens of thousands of stuff,
Mm.
articles and things they could be writing about. And so you do that, you put that out there, and then you promote that content a little bit, share it in different ways. There's different ways that you can do that, but ultimately it's similar, right? It's like you share it in more places, you post it in more places, and then that helps persuade Google, or helps Google see that it's popular, that it's interesting, gets initial traffic, and Google goes, okay, I quite like this. I'm gonna rank it, and then gradually over time, it builds some trust with you and sends you more and more traffic.
Interesting. Can I ask real quick? I mean, you make it sound really simple, right? I think a lot of people watching might be thinking, "Oh, okay, I've posted content, right?
Mhm.
I've put loads of stuff out there, and I haven't got the results I wanted to." What would you say? Where would you say people go wrong with this approach when it
So, I
comes to
mean,
posting content?
I mean, I think sometimes a lot of people they posted 10 pieces, 20 pieces,
Right.
50 pieces. Same like on social media, it's like you're posting once a week and then wondering why you're not famous, right? Whereas the people who are
Yeah.
famous are posting like 100 times a day, right? So it's the
Right. Right. Right.
like often it's just the volume of the effort that's put in. I would say, a really good advantage that you have with the type of content you publish on Google is it's people asking questions about your product or service or problems that you solve or things that you want to promote. And so you don't have to be a great writer, you just have to give them the information. Whereas on social media, you need to be really creative because
Mm.
it's so competitive because people are looking to be entertained. Whereas on Google, it's like, all Google wants is you just answer the question, right? So if you can answer the question well, then that's all you need to do. And so usually, like if you're a business, right? If you're a small publisher and you're promoting products and you're in a specific niche, you're going to know stuff about what's going on in that niche. You just answer the questions. And AI can help massively with that. Whereas like you can sometimes in like, 5, 10 minutes produce a really, really good answer
Yeah.
with AI, just you have to double check it. You have to do your editing. You can't just blindly post, but AI can make it incredibly quick, right? Whereas you can't do that on social media because AI doesn't have, right, maybe like the best engaging personality, right? But you can do it in Google.
Yeah, but then doesn't Google sort of hate AI? No?
Well, I mean, there's rumors that it,
Mm.
it hates AI, and this is one of the things of why people are fearful of Google because so many people say contradictory things. And so you probably heard
Oh
Google
yeah.
hates
Yeah.
AI, Google is banning AI, and Google's never said such thing. In fact, representatives from Google have said we do not have a problem with AI. And I'm almost quoting that like as an exact phrase of what they said, right?
Yeah.
So Google has no problem with AI. They have problems with low quality AI. And so if you press a button, right, and you say pick, 100 topics to write and then go write them and then you never look at them and you just publish them, then probably the AI is going to make some big mistakes. The content quality is not going to be that good. The topics that you chose might not be that relevant. Um, and so that's low quality content, right?
Mm.
And even if it was good quality, compare it to the next person who actually puts a bit more effort in and just
Mm.
maybe like tidies up the outline of the content, make sure that it answers the query, a bit quicker, or it's a bit more obvious what the answer is, so people don't have to read through a lot of the stuff. Just making little changes, maybe adding a couple of images to make it a bit more engaging. The
Mm.
person who put a bit more effort in is the one that Google's going to rank because it's better, because Google wants to rank the best. So, that's Google doesn't dislike AI. They just want the best stuff in their results. And so what I found is that if you get a human writer to produce the content, they can produce something amazing. If you just get the AI to produce the content, it's hit and miss. Could be good, could be bad. But you combine the two, right? Then you have something that's even better than it was before, right? Because the writer can get more out of their time, so they can put because it's not taking them quite so long to write or to do their research or to get their information, they can produce higher quality stuff in a shorter amount of time. And so again, AI is just raising the bar in quality.
Yeah. No, no, absolutely. It sounds good. It'd just be interesting to see. There must be some criteria or a checklist or something to abide by. You know, if people could only have that, I think they're probably thinking, well, then we've got a blueprint of how to create the best type of content consistently and hit that volume that you were talking about, right?
Yeah, I mean, so we use checklists, in our company and with our clients and students, stuff like that, of what to go through. But probably the simplest one, right? The simplest thing, the most important thing on the checklist is answer the question and answer the question fast, right?
Right,
That's
right.
probably like number one. And so you'll probably notice with a lot of AI content, it might make it incredibly long and they write very, very fluffy, like, navigating the environment of digital marketing,
It's
right?
bloated with crap,
Yeah,
right?
and so
That makes no
it
sense.
can be very, very wordy. So,
Yeah.
so one thing on our checklist is to make sure it doesn't have fluff, right? And so yeah, there is a checklist, but it's again it's kind of straightforward. It's often 95% of it is just common sense.
Yeah.
Answer the
Yeah.
query very well, add a few images,
Mhm.
just make sure your content answers the question and gives them a good experience. It's like if you're looking for something, give them the answer, tell them what to do next, right? It's as simple as that.
Nice. Yeah. That's one big takeaway if there's nothing else, right? To cut through it. So that's nice. That's helpful. Then, I mean, my next question was going to be, can Google even detect AI? But according to what you're saying, Google doesn't really have a problem with AI, right?
Yeah.
So,
And so they have a problem with low quality AI. And so
right.
could they detect low quality AI? Well, they already have been good at detecting lower quality content, right? So they look for some signals. And so this is where it can get complicated, like knowing, kind of like understanding how the algorithm works.
Mm.
And so I'm going to explain that. We might get like a bit into the technicals. But again, in the end, it's like, what does that really mean that you need to do? Just write good stuff, right? But let's get into the technicals, right? Just for a minute. And so Google works on levels. Google's goal, right, is to give people great answers on the internet
Yeah.
for as little money as possible, right? In terms of the cost. Okay. So does Google go out and look at every single page on the internet and study it at great depth, with AI algorithms and all the latest, greatest technology to go, is this page good? Well, that could cost them, say, $1, $2, $5 per page. They'd be bankrupt tomorrow. They can't afford to do that. So they look at other signals to decide on the quality, right? And so some of those things could be like the words that are mentioned on the page. It can also be, is the website already trusted? Are people linking to this page? So they look at all sorts of different signals. And in the beginning, they look at the simplest and the cheapest. And as you get more traffic, right? So let's say you're getting 100 visitors per month. They're just going to look very basic things and go, okay, it doesn't look so good, so we're going to ignore it. Or actually, this seems all right, so we'll keep sending it traffic and increasing, right? And then say the website grows and it gets to 10,000 visitors a day. Then Google goes, whoa, like now we're sending this website a lot of traffic. There's a lot of people seeing it. So let's spend a little bit more money researching the website. So then they dig in a little bit more. And they might look like, does it have grammar errors? Is the user engagement on the page good? Like, do people look at multiple pages? Are they clicking the back button and then searching for something else? They start to look at a deeper level. Okay, so exactly how they do that, I'm unsure, right? There's lots of theories and stuff like that, but there's still theories and they're backed up, by the results that we see in the real world. But in the end, it's just a case that they're going to start digging in. And when they start digging in, they actually might pull back and not send you as much traffic while they're doing that. And then if you pass that test, then they rank you even higher. And so you go through these series of more difficult tests, let's say, with Google, like over time. And so this is why sometimes you see these AI sites and they're saying like, hey, it's like I'm getting a ton of traffic and the traffic goes up. And then all of a sudden it just drops down to zero because Google at some point goes, let me look into this. And they go, it's just crap. So let
Yeah.
me get rid of it.
Interesting. Yeah.
So
Nice. That makes sense.
so Google's looking on that level at quality. Now, can they detect AI? So according to like AI detectors, it's like the US Constitution was written by AI, right? So maybe that was true, right? But I don't think so. But you can take, content that was produced decades ago, years ago, before AI existed, and it will say that it was AI. And so the detection tools are quite good. I would say, they get it right more often than not, but they don't get it right enough for it to be reliable.
Mhm.
And in the end, Google doesn't care anyway, right?
Yeah.
It cares about the quality and how people engage with it and if they like it.
Yeah, so a lot of it, from what I'm hearing, comes down to common sense, right? Like it does with social media, any sort of level of content. Just,
Mhm.
just need to know what you're doing, what the purpose is, answer the question, like you said, and offer value, right?
And yeah, and the thing is, when you do this, and it's really not that hard to do. It's something that you can implement in your own business in an hour or two a day, or less, or even in 30 minutes. Like we've seen some people do it in like 15 minutes a day, right? And be adding content on a daily basis, growing their traffic, and it's really high ROI, like high return on investment, of the time you put in,
Yeah.
because you're talking about like your product, the problems you solve, right? The things that you have on offer for your audience that, so they can come and, buy more stuff from you or whatever it is that you recommend. And you're just stacking up this high quality traffic. Like each piece of content you make is an asset that, lasts for a long, long time. So if you think about it, if you put a lot of effort into a social media post, what's that going to be doing for you in 1 year's time? Probably nothing. It's lost, right? And buried under everything else. When you do a really good post for your website and Google sends you traffic, it tends to get more traffic over time. It tends to get more trusted.
Mm.
It tends to send you this long-term traffic and just keep on making you money, right? So,
Yeah. Makes sense.
I mean, that's one of the reasons why I like Google traffic so much is you're stacking these assets that really, really build up, and keep driving profit into your business. Whereas anything you do on social media is quite short term, and also the
Mhm.
algorithm can change, and all of a sudden, Facebook doesn't want to promote you anymore. TikTok doesn't like your content anymore. They change their algorithm, and you can't get it. So yeah, those things can happen with Google, but it's much less severe. If you're doing good stuff, you tend to keep on getting traffic, right?
Yeah,
Some
yeah.
people do get caught out, but it's less common than you
Okay.
than you.
Interesting. All right. So look, let's switch this up a bit because we've talked about Google traffic, Google traffic, Google traffic, right? And we've
Mm.
been singing its praises. It's unbelievable. We love it, all that good stuff, right? There's no denying that. And of course it is amazing. I know that. However, is there ever a situation where we should not be going after Google traffic?
So yeah, there is, right? So if no one is interested is the wrong word. If no one is looking for what you have to offer,
Hmm.
if they're not searching Google to solve the problem to find a solution to the problem that you solve, right? Or for the service that they offer, or for the product that you recommend, or something, right? So let's say you invent a new product, right? Um, let's say it's a new pair of sunglasses that allows you to teleport across the world, right? I'm like, great, I'm going to write loads of articles about this, but nobody's searching for that because nobody knows it exists.
Right.
So it's not going to work, right? And there's certain things that people don't search for. There's certain products that people buy that are impulse purchase, right? And one example is like we have an agency, and so people do search for, say, marketing agencies, right? But not that often because business owners are busy. They're caught in
Mhm.
their day to day. They're not really searching for marketing, and they're not searching to spend money on advertising. They tend to be impulsive when it comes to signing up for marketing or advertising. It's like they hear a story, they see something on social media, they see an ad and go, "Oh yeah, like I do want more sales. I do want more traffic. So let me go check out this company." But they're not
Mhm.
searching for it like day to day, right? They are a bit, but not so much.
Mhm.
Whereas other niches, right, other things is like people do search a lot, right? So any kind of local business, people look up the local business, right? If you're selling like a product, whether it's microphones, because that's what I'm looking at right now, or like the paintings in the back that you've got there, shoes, right? People look online of like, okay, I want this type of shoe in this color. They go do their research, right? If they're buying a computer, they're doing the research on the model that they should get.
Yeah.
So the majority of niches is people are doing a ton of searches, right? Like you're selling a water filter. Well, people are looking like, what are the poisons in water? What chemicals do I need to remove? Right?
Mhm.
What are good water filters? Should I buy this one or that one? Should I store my water in copper or should I store it in glass? Or is it okay to keep it in plastic? there's so many questions that when you really start to think about the products and services that you sell or that you recommend, right? Whatever it is that you're doing, people have a ton of questions, a ton of things to research, and a lot of information that they're trying to find. So I would say like 95 to 99% of businesses, it works for, but there's a few cases where it's not going to be relevant because essentially nobody is looking for it, right? And if nobody's searching for it, then they're not going to type it into Google and come across you.
Yeah, I mean, like, that makes total sense. I guess the word that sort of shouts out to me is research, basically, right? Any type of research before making a buying decision, which, yeah,
Yep.
and that makes perfect
Yep.
sense.
Yeah, and even before they've decided to buy this, like, okay, let's say you've injured yourself and you have some pain,
Mm.
right?
Yeah,
Most
yeah.
people go research online to do with that condition, right? And
Well, they
then
stay up all night, don't they? They stay
yeah,
up all night worried about it. So they're ready to,
yeah,
yeah.
and then they kind of find, some options of what they can do, right?
Yeah.
For that particular condition, and they might, pick a certain specialist as a result of that, because there's many different options of how you could treat, a certain condition. So before people even know what they want to buy, or even
Mm.
that they might want to buy something or spend money, they might have a problem, right, that they're trying to solve, right?
Yeah. Well, it's quite interesting actually. I think I've told you this before, but I regularly do blood work and all that kind of stuff, and I pay privately, mainly because I just want to have full control. I don't want to wait. When
Mhm.
it comes to health, I don't mess around with that. So, and every time I go to the doctor to ask for certain blood tests, and I'm telling them exactly what I want, they're just always shocked. They're just like, and I'm like, yeah, I've done my research because you're that invested.
Mhm.
And if your kid's got a problem or if medically, I think is amazing, like in terms of the amount of real sort of demand, like you mentioned, that's the word, right? Demand for knowledge and thirst and research that people do
Mhm.
before even looking to make a buying decision. They just, they're preloaded, which leads them down a path, and then they phone a specialist or an expert.
And I can imagine, say, for you, you've really done your research. And so when you're looking for a blood test, you're like, right, I want this blood test, right?
Yeah,
So let's say it was a blood test for testosterone, right?
yeah, yeah,
And you probably wouldn't just say, some people might just search for testosterone blood test, but then there's several different types, right? Of like free testosterone and other
exactly.
stuff too, right? And so then when you've like, okay, now I really want this specific one, and probably like every health center does that test, but there might only be one that's written about the fact that they do that test.
Yeah.
Which one are you going to call? The one that's not talked about it, or the one that says that they do it? It was like, well, I'll call the one that said that they'll do it because they're probably better because they've talked about it. And I'm not going to waste my time calling them, right? Because it says on their website that they offer that.
100%. Yeah. So that was something which applies, quite relevant and recent as well. Okay, so let's move on really quickly. So what about Bing and Microsoft? We talked about Google. We mentioned Bing with ChatGPT, but I'd like
Mhm.
to ask your thoughts on Bing and Microsoft. Um,
So Bing results are, like, my personal opinion is very, very competitive with Google now in terms of quality.
mhm.
One area where Google does really well is with Google Maps, right? But in terms of like overall results, sometimes it's like I'll look at the Bing results and they'll actually be better. And so, yeah, Bing is stealing some market share. But at the end of the day, Google has Android phones. That's, I think, like 40% of the market in the US, and I think maybe 70, 80% across the world, something like that. Um, and even in iPhones, Google has the deal with Apple that Google is the default search engine, right? Could that deal change, right? That would be like quite a significant thing if that deal changed and Bing could offer, more money than Google to get that deal, but Google makes way more on its advertising platform. It's way more sophisticated, has way more advertisers. So it's just got such a dominant play that it's probably not going to be shifted anytime soon, and possibly, it's going to require something insanely disruptive, even more, than the current AI stuff that we see. But to look at the amount of traffic, I can just show you on screen real quick here. Um, just some of the stats here
Yeah.
that I've got from an old slide. So let me just share the screen real quick.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
So,
yeah, so like this is from one of our sites, and it's representative of what we see across the board. And so Google, by far the most dominant, in this case, 26,000 visitors, and then Bing, 4,500. And then Yahoo.com, right, which is essentially just the Bing search engine again. They use the same algorithm with just some minor changes, but it's roughly the same results. And so, when Yahoo is showing up, it's really just what's showing up in Bing. And then you've got, say, sites like DuckDuckGo, Brave Search, Yandex as well. They can show up. So, yeah, all of these here, they make up all the search traffic. The Bing traffic is, Yahoo traffic, DuckDuckGo, they're all really good quality. They're all equally as good quality from what we see. But Google remains the dominant. And so Google's taking still about 80% of the search traffic from ours. And so when you look at the stats online, they say Google's got about 90, but from what we see in terms of the traffic that we get, it's typically, that they've got, around 80, they drive about 80% of the traffic.
Yeah.
The interesting thing, though, is it's way easier with Bing to rank for extremely competitive terms when you know how. So, we figured out some things and noticed some things and was like, wow, Bing will, if we produce good content, Bing will rank us very quickly for that content and put us on the front page. Whereas Google is way more cautious because essentially I think Google's a lot more worried about spam. So they tend to be a bit cautious in giving, say, smaller sites that traffic, but you can get really amazing rankings for
Well,
very
yeah.
high commercial intent keywords, very competitive keywords quite easily on
Well,
Bing.
I actually recall one of the tests. Actually, I don't know if you remember, but it was I think one was Drew Barrymore, literally just Drew Barrymore was on the
Mhm.
front page, like top result or something, right? Top three.
Yeah,
And then the other one was the Rock sunglasses.
yeah,
You think about that with Google, forget about it.
yeah. You
Like,
couldn't you couldn't have done something like that with
no
Google.
way,
We
not a
pulled it off with
chance.
Bing. Yeah.
Yeah, that was insane. So what would you say is the biggest sort of the major downsides? You've already discussed how much traffic you can get as well, but are there any other sort of limiting factors around using Bing on Microsoft?
Um, So in terms of like targeting them,
Yeah.
like to get traffic, well, I mean, I don't think there's any downsides. It's just something that you get, right? And I think because you can get big traffic from Bing is, and you in terms of ranking for like, the big keywords that can make you a lot of money is you may also think about that a little bit strategically as well,
Right.
right? So whereas like I used to say, well, just ignore Bing because, what you do for Google will work for Bing, which is pretty much true.
Hmm.
There's a little bit of optimization that you can do for Bing, some simple things that will help you, rank on the first page of Bing for some competitive terms. So it's worthwhile adding to the mix once you've got comfortable. I'd say it's a slight, ever so slightly more advanced, but still pretty easy. But yeah, start with just, the first thing for most people is just publish more content and promote it, and then it's going to work for both Google and Bing.
It's funny how it always comes back to the same thing, right?
Yeah.
That people don't realize that it's keeping it simple, offer
Mhm.
value, answer questions.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So basically, what you summarized that well, and I'd guess we've seen the difference with Google. You're always going to get like ridiculously more traffic. With Google, it's just harder, right? I guess to rank, using the same strategy. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's just what works for Google
Yeah,
works for Bing and for the
but
other search engines.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's just easier to get results. Okay, cool. So. And look, we've discussed this before, and I know you talk about this and you have done for years and years. I remember going back almost, a decade. I know you've been at this for a long time, Chris, but why does Google love big brands? What is it about big brands that
Yeah, so that's
Google's interested?
interesting. It ties in with Bing well, and like one of the reasons you can do so well with Bing is Bing doesn't have the obsession with big brands that Google has, right?
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons why you can get some of the big rankings on Bing that you might not be able to get on Google. So the
Hmm.
question is, why does Google repeatedly rank the big websites out there like Wikipedia, BBC? And there's been studies, where they've looked at like, okay, what websites appear in the top 10, right, all the time? And it's something like 70, 80% of the results, and it's probably even 90% now, is owned by 16 companies, right? So Google is favoring like essentially 16 different companies. There's lots of brands under those companies, but it's essentially all from, multi million dollar, billion dollar companies. And more recently, they've really favored Reddit. as well. Like they've fallen in love with Reddit. They have a deal with Reddit to license their content to feed their AI algorithm. So maybe there's something fishy going on there with that. Maybe not. Maybe it's also just those things independently happened. Um, but at the end of the day, Google has this massive love for big brands. And small publishers are very upset because it's got worse every year that goes by. They squeeze out small publishers and reward big brands. Recently, they came out and said, right, we're gonna punish big brands that aren't doing good stuff, right? That are throwing out junk content, right? So people have been complaining, say that Forbes and other big websites, they throw out these reviews of affiliate products. They don't really care about the user. They just recommend whatever is paying the most. They don't have the editorial oversight that they do. So why is Forbes allowed to do that, and then smaller publishers who have great content don't get seen so easily? And so Google was supposed to come out and punish sites that were doing this sort of thing. And they did punish coupon sections of like some of these big websites, right? I think like The Guardian was one of them. But there was a lot of these big newspapers, these big brands that got their coupon sites, but not all the coupon sections where you would say like, why is The Guardian writing and making a coupon directory like to get discount codes? So they penalized those sites. They did it manually. But they didn't do it for the rest of it. And so it appears like that was just maybe for show and a bit of a warning to the bigger brands to say, hey, like keep the quality high, or we're going to come after you, which is kind of like how Google works, right? They tend to do things to scare people. But getting back to the key question of why overall do they have this love for big brands?
Yeah.
Is, well, you have to understand Google's a business and they want to provide the best service for the cheapest price possible. And so it's very, very expensive, like I said before, to figure out what is really good quality. They could spend, say, like $2, $3, $4 running an algorithm on a page to like analyze it so well and see if it's, the best of the best. But it's too expensive. If they did that, they'd be out of business. So what's an easy proxy for quality? Well, if the business is already established, it's real, right? It has brand searches. People look it up, like people search for the Forbes website, for example. They search for The Guardian, they search for the BBC, right? And there's only so many of them. It's like, okay, so the Google team could go across and review, say, 500 or 1,000 big brand websites and say, yeah, the quality on these sites is really good. It's up to scratch. And so because of all of those things, and also because people tend to trust the information from bigger brands because they're familiar with them, even though there's no necessary good reason to say that they might be better quality, right? But people tend to trust them anyway. And because the bigger brands tend to get attacked for legal reasons, they tend to have a bit tighter editorial control and these sort of things, then Google can just say, well, if it's a big company, then the quality is probably good, right? And maybe great. Whereas smaller brands could be great, but it could also be spam. It could also be crap. So to save money, we'll just reward these 1,000 sites and mostly ignore the rest of the internet, or make it way harder for them to show. It's like they have to be absolutely amazing before we're prepared to get the attention, or they have to start like building a bit of a brand of their own.
Wow.
And so that's the reason I think Google loves big brands, is just because it's cheap for them to rank them in the algorithm. It's a
It
cheap
makes, I mean,
way to do
benefit of
it.
the doubt. You don't need to. That's why you have like membership, like members clubs and stuff, right? Because they have to do a test, or they check your background or things like that, so you don't have to. You're pre-approved basically,
Mhm.
because they've invested in one person and going through all those checks. So it's
Yeah.
like, right, we don't have to worry about it later on once they're on that list.
Yeah.
It's almost like it being at the airport, right? In the US, you have that what is it, TSA?
Yeah.
Approved? So yeah, so they can
Yeah,
afford to
TSA
do less.
approved, yeah. So
Yeah,
it's kind of like that idea, yeah, that
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
if you're pre-approved, if you're a big brand, then we can trust you a bit more, so we'll reward you more.
So we just
And
yeah,
they've leaned in that more and more over the years, but and that's a big reason, some people have said, right, I'm quitting, right? I'm quitting Google traffic because it's a rigged thing. They only favor big brands. But the reality is you can still get a ton of traffic from Google, even as a small brand. You just have to know how to do it. You just have to recognize, okay, there's a quality threshold. So you have to make sure you don't make a mistake of publishing poor quality, because they'll really punish you if you publish low quality as a small publisher. And then you can become a brand, right? And so essentially, like Google, if you're an e-commerce store, Google already is very, very happy to show you, right? They assume an e-commerce store, same kind of thing. If you're an e-commerce store, you're probably not going to be throwing out junk content because you're a real company. You're not going to spam your own website,
Yeah.
right? Logical, right? And so if you're an e-commerce company, if you're a local business, they favor you a lot better. But if you're a small publisher that's, not a local business, not an e-com store, you're going to have a tougher time. But it's like, there's lots and lots of topics out there that need answering that haven't been answered by the big brands, that haven't been answered by local businesses, that haven't been answered by e-com stores, local businesses, all these different things. Plus, Google is still okay to rank small publishers. It's just going to take them a bit of time to trust them. And so what you need to do is just demonstrate that like you're essentially a real business and produce quality. And the reason why most small publishers get hit, right? And most of them don't want to admit this, but this is the reality, is quite often their website is not good, right? They're maybe less experienced, they're not producing quality, and that's why they've been hit. You will have some exceptions to the case, and I've seen that. So you do get some cases where it's a great website, got great content, and Google decided to ignore it or penalize it. But then when you study it, it's like, well, you didn't really have an about page. You didn't say who you were, right? So Google was looking at your website and was like, who is this person? Who is writing for this website? What company are they? They appear to be completely anonymous. And it's like, are people linking to that website? Are people talking about it? So if you actually promote the website, right, and build some buzz around the website, then Google goes, well, there are people coming to this website. There are people interested in the content. And so Google then says, okay, like, yeah, this site is worthy of getting traffic.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, the threshold is higher than it was before, but that's also a good thing because most people aren't prepared to do the work to get over that threshold. So if you have to do some extra things like make an about page, right? Make sure the content is better quality. Add a few extra images in the content, right? When most people just want to press a button with AI and just throw it out there. And you can still do this like really quick with AI and produce great content in like 20, 30 minutes, right? Some content, it might, certain types of content, it might take hours to do, but you can still, for certain types, do it in like 20 minutes. So if you can do that, if you put that extra effort in, then what's on the other side of that? Because it's so hard for most people to get past that, or they don't know how. If you do get to that other side and the algorithm does like you, right? Then you have something that's exceptionally powerful, is that you've got access to Google traffic, right? And you can essentially post something. You can pick a topic and you can be on the front page of Google. That's what you start to get to, right? And that's an extremely powerful position to be in because it's the best source of traffic that you can get. And it's also the most traffic, right, that's out there. So it's the biggest and best. And so for me, I just see it as an opportunity. If it makes things a little bit more difficult for other people, if you know how to solve it and you know what to do, then you just do it and you get the reward. So I actually look at it, as a positive. And so, just like I've got a few examples here just to quickly show you of small publishers, right? And this is using AI, primarily AI content. Well, all of the content is AI. So it's just up on screen now here. So all of the content is AI. It is human edited. It is really, really good quality, but you can see like this website's going up. I think it's up to like about 20, 30 clicks a day. And this will just keep on going up and up and up. They're just going to keep getting more and more trust from Google, right? And so you can see, certain search terms here bringing in a lot of clicks. Okay, and this is I'm not going to reveal the niche because I don't want to ruin it for the person who's decided to go into this niche and is doing really well. But it's related to cars and changing things on cars or upgrading cars, right? Another one, gardening, right? So growing traffic, still going up. Like it's not a lot of traffic, but I'm saying like you can get clicks, and it's like, well, if you're getting 480 clicks here, right, over just a couple of months, that's worth $5. As you start stacking that and building that up, that adds up. It becomes thousands of visitors or tens of thousands of visitors. So we've been in niches, very small niches. Like, so we were in, we're a content marketing company. So press releases is one topic that we talked about. We made a website about press releases, and literally got hundreds of thousands of visitors, right? So like literally like traffic worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it was maybe like about a $5,000 cost to put it all together, right? And here as well. So um, this is in the storage niche, so a special kind of section of the storage niche. And up to here, like per month now, this site is doing about 2,500 visits, and this one here is doing now per month, because this is an old screenshot actually. So this is up to April. And so now this site, so a couple of months on from April, right? So yeah, about 2 months on from April, this website's now up to 3,000 visits per month, right? So you can see initially here, it's like Google was just ignoring it. It's like, this looks like one of those small publishers I can't trust. And then at some point it said, okay, after a couple of months, yeah, I can trust this, right? I can trust this website. After about six to 8 weeks, it's like, okay, I'm going to start sending some traffic. And it starts to increase, and that just kept on going, right? So this graph keeps on going up, and they're now on, I think, just over 3,000 visitors per month, and it just goes up every single week. And they're just posting, I think, once or twice a day here, right? So,
Wow. Yeah.
it's small publishers can win. They just, you just have to know how to do it, and be persistent, which is really produce good quality content and just do it regularly and promote it. You don't have to do a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah, yeah.
promotion, just a little bit.
Absolutely. I mean, I was going to ask, look, if I had a client tomorrow, I thought just by adding content using a fast process with AI will work, but I guess you've already answered that because it has to be quality driven, and of course the hybrid model with a human, which
Well,
is
well,
all these examples that you showed.
interestingly, like if it's a local business or an e-commerce business, you can get away with lower quality content and still get the traffic because the threshold is a bit lower. But we tested like the quality threshold, and we found that the higher quality content, right, as you would expect, does a lot better. So,
Which is
for
worth
us,
it, right?
it's
It's
like
just
put
worth
the
it.
extra 30 minutes an hour
Yeah.
into content sometimes, because just the money on the other side of that is so much more from the extra traffic that you will
Yeah,
get.
yeah. Makes sense. Makes sense. And also, I've actually noticed some sites that are making um like hardly any money at all, but they sell for a lot because they're not driving. I mean, the traffic stuff we can talk about, but they're making no money. They sell for a lot. I've seen this happen a lot, repeatedly, and I've asked you about this before as well. But is this based on the potential for Google traffic as opposed to what they're actually driving?
Yeah, so if you go to some of these marketplaces like Flipper,
Yeah.
you'll see a website, it's got maybe 5,000 visitors a month, 10,000 visitors per month. But it's not making any money, right?
Mm.
And they might have some affiliate links on there, but or maybe they sell something, but it's not really well optimized, right? In terms of like making a sale, they haven't written essentially a good pitch for their own product. Um, but it's getting traffic, right? So one of the things I've looked for before is like, okay, well, if there's a website out there, and I've bought some like this before, that's getting a lot of traffic and making no money, right? Then if it's not making any money, it's not going to attract too many buyers. So I'll go in and buy a website that's not making any money, or making like, $500 per month, but I'll pay way more than I should, right? So a website making $500 per month, you might say, okay, it's probably worth maybe like 3,000, 4,000, but like I'd pay 10,000, maybe 15,000 for that. If I can see that Google already likes it, because if Google already likes the website, it's just traffic on tap. All I have to do is just keep posting content, and it's going to rank, and it's going to get traffic, providing, the quality is good enough. It
Mhm.
will do that. And so that's why you can build a small site, get it to a certain level within a niche, right? So, like let's say that storage site, for example, is now in the storage niche. And people spend a lot of money in that specific niche, right? It's like some of the rentals and some of the things for that particular type of storage is very, very high. And so to a storage company, that is now incredibly valuable, because they could use that website to rank for literally thousands of topics, right? They just have to post the topics. So it has all of this inbuilt potential to get a ton of traffic from Google. It's almost like it's like buying like a social media account from an influencer, because they already have a ton of followers, right? And so every time you post, it's going to be seen by a lot of followers. It's the same thing here, except you can't see so easily that this website has that potential to reach such a big audience inside of Google every single time. You have to know what you're looking for, right? So you have to know what those signals
Yeah.
are, and to be able to see if the website can actually rank and has this potential. But when you know how to do that, then you would know what website to buy. And also, if you have a website
Yeah.
like that, which is easier to build than you might think, then you essentially have a license to print money just by building these sites over and over, which some people do. They just do that. They build these sites and then flip them.
Yeah, yeah. No, it makes sense. It makes sense. And what does the sort of the niche within the niche play as a part in all this? Would you increase your chances or the value of the site if you're sort of niching down even further? You know, we've heard this phrase before, right? Niche within a niche. For example, you might have
Yeah,
accountants, but then you've got like insolvency accountants. So something
I
like
see in the chat here, like some people asking about niches as well. So niches are important in that, certain niches will pay more than others. Like you put certain time into, like, let's just say if you have a product or you're in a niche that nobody's interested, it's dying, right? So let's say selling landline telephones,
that.
right? It's probably a niche where the sales of landline telephones has been going down for a long period, right? Or would you want to be in the cell phone niche where like that's has been increasing, right? So it's a simple thing like that when picking a niche, like thinking about demand, like how much growth is there going to be in the niche? How much do people spend in that niche? How much do they care? Like what level of urgency do they have around buying those products? But then, if you're in a business and you're already in your niche, so then what do? Right? You're in your niche, but that's where you get to the niches within niches, right? So the sub niches, which is I
Mhm.
think what you're getting at.
Yeah.
So one of the industries I'm aware that you work in is to do with sunglasses and eyewear, and you also work with clients in that space. Um, and so within there, there's sub niches, right? So you've got, let's just take eyewear, right? I don't know too much about glasses, for eyesight, right?
Mhm.
But you know more than me. And so what might be like some of the subtopics or sub niches within that?
Yeah, so you've got like an optician, so
Mhm.
they treat all sorts of elements and issues with the eyes, right? To give people prescriptions so they can see better. But they also some of these opticians deal with myopia management, which is a certain condition within, that field. So it becomes a niche within a niche because not everybody is an expert in that field.
Okay.
And managing that can be really, really lucrative for them because they can charge a monthly fee because it's helping manage that condition. So
Yeah, so this isn't just about traffic and ranking. It's about, like you say, it's like understanding the business of, okay, where's more money being spent? Where is there less competition?
yeah.
Right. And so that's both true, like when you're looking at competition in Google, but also understanding your niche as well. And so you said it's myopia.
Myopia, myopia, myopia
Yeah, and
management
so
control.
most likely, I would imagine, right, not knowing what this word means, is there's probably a lot of opportunity around targeting terms for myopia, like even say on a local level of, right, okay, so you pick a city like London, New York, Los Angeles, any individual town, and who's providing myopia, like that could be an opportunity, like who is a specialist. And there's
Mhm.
also going to be a ton of questions of like, okay, if I have, and myopia is a condition, so people would say, if I have myopia,
Yeah, lots of
type of
questions.
glasses
Yeah,
should I have?
yeah, exactly.
Um, right. And so, what sort of questions might they have?
Well, what's the best way to manage, right?
Okay.
A good one is kids as well. Parents asking about kids who have
Okay. Yeah.
myopia.
And so that's like a
Um,
sub niche within a sub niche, right?
yeah,
So you've
exactly.
got
Yeah,
eyewear, then myopia, and then
yeah.
kids with myopia. And like, so kids with myopia is like you could probably build like an entire site or a section of your site around that topic. And essentially like, create a really amazing resource. And you could do that, in an AI assisted way as well. And then, promote that in different ways. Right. And that could be like a huge source of revenue for the company, but it's also, it's providing value to the world as well, right? Because people are looking for the solution. And right now it's like they might go into Google and not be able to find it, right? And when that's Google doesn't want people to be in that situation. That's a bad experience. And people don't like that. Like, and we've all gone onto Google and looked for something that we wanted and couldn't
Mhm.
really find what we were looking for and being a bit disappointed. So you're filling that gap.
Mhm. Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. The niche within the niche within the niche. That's a new one,
Yeah.
right? It's like the
Yeah.
Matrix. Like how deep does this go? Okay, so what else? So I've got a few more questions. I know we're slightly pushed for time, but I don't know if you've got time to run through those. There's not too many left, if you're good with that.
Yeah, yeah, let's go through. Let's go through.
Because there's some important stuff here, so I really appreciate that. So the next question would be this one is the one that takes us another further 3 hours and we get nowhere. But the Google updates, I think people will probably want to know your take on that. What are the key findings from the Google updates that happened recently? Because there's been a few in quick succession, right?
So, I mean, I think we covered a few of these already. I mean, I keep looking over to my right here because I'm just making sure I don't miss anything from some of my notes and stuff that I've got. But I knew Google updates would be a topic that's come up here. So, um, the first thing is to understand how Google works, right? So before we get into any update, it's like understand Google as an entity of what its purpose is. It's a business, right? It's
Mhm.
there to make money. Some might say it wants to take over the world with AI, right? So I don't know about that one, but it's certainly possible. They did get rid of their "Don't be evil" slogan a few years back, just
Oh,
before
wow.
AI came on the scene. You'd think they want to keep that one with, AI robots potentially taking over the planet. But they're a business, right? And so what do they want from you, right? As a publisher, they want you to create great content, right? They don't want you to spam. They don't want you to manipulate. They don't want you to trick them into putting low quality stuff out there that is a bad experience for people and not giving them the best answer. They don't want that, right? And so they are going to do things in their algorithm and also their business and public relations strategy to stop you from doing that. And it also means that they're not going to tell you exactly how they work, and they might even mislead you. Because think about it, if Google comes out and says, hey, this is how we work, this is how our algorithm works. If you put a headline here and you put an image here and you promote from this website, we're going to rank you number one. Guess what everyone will do? Everyone will do exactly that. And then they lose their advantage. So
Yeah.
Google plays a game of essentially um, updating the algorithm to make it difficult to be spammed, but also tricking people at the same time and confusing them so that they can't maybe take advantage of any loopholes in the algorithm. Um, I don't recommend taking advantage of loopholes in the algorithm, but let's say, right now, Reddit ranks really well, right? LinkedIn ranks really well. So you should probably post some content on Reddit and LinkedIn, right?
Mhm.
It's kind of a loophole that it ranks very well, but that's something that you could do. But just bear in mind that maybe next year that won't work anymore, and Google might have changed its mind and it doesn't want to rank Reddit anymore, and it's chosen someone else. Um, but Google is going to do things and pretend to do things to confuse you. So this is also why people are so confused about Google, is because there's so many different arguments and different information and everything else. And so you're looking confused already, right? And so let me give an example. Google will say the authority of a website, how big the brand is like we do not care about that. We just rank great content. They'll say something along these lines.
Yeah.
It's an absolute lie, right? Everyone who works in the industry knows this is a lie because we promote stuff, we publish on big websites, we publish on small websites, we see differences, right? So
Mhm.
Google will frequently lie to confuse people to get them to do what? What's their goal? What are they trying to do?
What do you mean, as in,
Well, what does good like as you as like, you've got a website, what do they want you to do as a website owner?
well, they want you to post content, but well, provide solutions, right?
Yeah,
Provide
provide
answers.
provide provide good answers, provide good quality content.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So you can
So
actually help people and,
So however they can persuade the industry to stop producing crap and
yeah.
produce more good stuff while also stop trying to trick them, because if they trick them, they're going to punish them really bad, right? So recently Google went and banned a bunch of low quality AI sites,
Mhm.
ones which it could find publicly because people had written about them publicly and were boasting like, hey, I'm publishing crap AI content and I rank really high in Google.
Mhm.
Google went and penalized them all, right? But then those same people are doing the same strategy in secret and it's still working, right? So that's Google not able to deal with the low quality AI content so easily. And so trying to make an example of people to get people to stop. So I'm not saying go out and produce low quality content because they are getting better and better at stopping that, right? And eventually they got a lot better quite quickly. But they will try and frighten people into away from doing things which actually work if they don't think it's in their best interest. So that's the first thing you need to know is Google is not going to be honest with you, but also in the end, all they want you to do is publish great stuff. Okay. Also, the fact that they continue to love brands more and more means that you have to bring in big brands into your promotion strategy. Because as a small publisher, you might not have the weight or the authority or the trust or the strength of brand to be able to compete. But if you start publishing your content, right, or advertising your content on big brand websites, it's something that we do at AmpiFire. We have this process where it's create, repurpose, distribute. Okay, so we create content, we put it into different formats, right? So we'll create a video, infographic, this sort of thing, an article, and then we'll publish it on a lot of different websites, okay, with many of them being very, very big website, big brands. And that kind of helps the website take some of that authority, some of that trust into their own site, okay? It's not just about the links, it's about the traffic, it's about the clicks, it's all about this stuff. But again, it's common sense. It's like, you produce content, publish and promote it in lots of places, including big websites, right? It's quite straightforward, quite simple in the premise of what you do. And so, that's more important than it was before. And so now to get into the specifics of what did Google change? We talked about some of these things already. Well, they're not against AI content. They are against low quality. So their threshold against low quality is even higher than it was before. Google has a problem with AI spam, that it's actually very expensive for them to study all of the spam pages and decide that they're not good content. So essentially they just, if it looks and smells like a low quality site, they set like a low bar, like if it doesn't look like a big brand, if it's relatively small, the content doesn't look great, ban the website, ignore it. So they got very, very aggressive at ignoring low quality sites. So it basically means that it's the threat, and again, it's the threshold of quality is for a smaller publisher is a little bit higher. But with AI, right, you can still get great quality content very, very quickly. You just have to be smart about it, use the right tool, this sort of thing, right? And so that's like one of the big changes is it's a bit harder than it was before. But for me, that's just an opportunity because most people won't make that little bit of effort. They want to press a button, go to bed and wake up tomorrow, the next day rich. It doesn't work like that. We all know that. The other thing that's very, very interesting and a really big opportunity for businesses is if you're an existing business, Google trusts you a lot more than it did before. In comparison to, say, everyone else, like all the small publishers. So if you're an e-commerce site, if you're a local business, even if you're very small, you can still get a lot of traffic very, very easily just because Google goes, well, you're a real business. You're not going to spam, right? The chance of you spamming is very, very low because if you do get caught spamming, we're going to never rank you again. So it's a very, very high risk play to spam as a real business because Google can, penalize you for eternity and never let you back into Google. And so if you just publish reasonable content, doesn't have to be great, just reasonable, you can rank really, really well, even if it's AI content. And we've seen examples where we've had clients come to us, right, from, they've been using another service and they've been publishing really bad AI content, medical companies. The information is factually incorrect, right? It could get them sued, right? And so we don't advise that, but the content was still driving a lot of traffic. Obviously, over time, Google's probably going to get better at figuring that stuff out, or they're going to get in legal trouble. And so, you should still go the quality route, right? And not just blindly publish it and not check it and do any of these different things and go through your checklist. But it just goes to show that as e-commerce brand, as a local business, as any type of real business, any type of real brand, the traffic is there waiting for you in a big, big way, right? So you just have to start publishing content, doing a little bit of promotion, and the traffic just, is just up and to the right. Like immediately, as soon as you start publishing content and promoting it, it's up and to the right. With a small publisher, they have that little kind of like what we call the sandbox period before it starts to increase, right? But small businesses, e-commerce businesses, local businesses, they can, in most cases, they can take off very, very quickly. So that's one of the big changes, like the big shifts that we've seen is small independent publishers, affiliates. It's a little bit harder, But if you do the right things, the reward on the other side is much bigger now. And
Mhm.
then for e-commerce, local businesses, any real brands, there's just huge potential
Mm.
because it essentially removed a ton of competition, right, for you.
Interesting. Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, that's all powerful stuff, right? It's just good to digest it, I think, because a lot of people know bits and pieces about the updates, but that was a great sort of summary and breakdown. So I appreciate that. Okay, I mean, we've covered this. We've talked about small publishers, so I don't think that question is too relevant. But can you, well, I guess you've answered this as well, but can you start a new site brand new and have success? I guess, of course, you can based on what you've
Yeah.
talked about, right?
Yeah, you just have to do it the right way. You have to
Yeah.
make sure you can't cut corners. You used to be able to cut corners,
Yeah.
right? You used to be able to cheat.
Yeah.
Used to be able to spam. Used to be able to have lower quality stuff and get away with it. And I'm sure some of the really technical SEO, spammy black hat people can still figure out some ways to do that. But it's way harder than it used to be. So I never recommended that anyway. It's like, you want to do something that's for the long term.
Yeah.
But if you know what to do, if you know how to set up your about page, if you know the type of content to publish, if you know how to research the topics, right? Because keyword tools, they don't always help you because it's the same information as everybody else has got. So if you know some of these like little strategies, which are straightforward, and it's just like learning any other skill, like if you're learning social media or something else. If you know this stuff, then for sure, right? You can do it. We're doing it, and we're seeing many other people doing this very very successfully, and taking their traffic to like really serious levels, right? And then because there's this lack of competition compared to before, it's like once you do get onto the other side of that, right? Once you do start to see things go up, it's like you've then got something, you own a property, you own a digital asset, which is, incredibly valuable because it's harder to get that than it used to be. So if anything, it's like if you learn that skill, you have set yourself up in a really good way to make a lot of money.
Nice. Nice. Okay. So with that, we've covered the create, repurpose, and then distribute, right? We've talked about that concept. But of course, that's just based on everything we've talked about that anyone should be doing if they're trying to create content and get traffic overall, right? Um, the question I've got then is, so we know this works. You've touched on covering topics and answering questions, but what is it that people should be writing about specifically? Can we get a little tighter on that,
Yeah,
perhaps?
well, we talked a little bit about, with in the eyewear niche, right? Like
Yeah.
you said,
Well, the
you
myopia control, yeah, you could be
yeah,
talking
you
about
start going into sub niches. So you're like, okay, so what first question is I would ask is like, okay, so what makes more money, right? And brings you like the best type of customers. Okay. And so say in the eyewear niche, it's people who have myopia, they have a need for certain type of eyewear for certain type of tests. They tend to spend more money. They
that.
come back for the long term, right? It's like, okay, well that's one I say that's one way of like inspiring content topics is go like follow the money, follow the demand, follow the money. And it doesn't have to be something which is, attracting massive audience, right? So, you might just, if you are in the eyewear niche, you might first go for, say, fashionable eyewear, right? And that's going to appeal to a broader audience, whereas myopia is a lot more niche, but people will spend more money. There's less competition. Um, and so, that's the first route is thinking where the money is, what's the best type of audience, what's like your ideal client. And then building upon that, right? The next level is then to think of like, well, what are all the questions that they ask? What are all the problems that they need solving? What comparisons might they be making, right? What things might they be unsure of? And then interesting things happen, right? As you answer more of these topics, as you write more about this stuff, what happens in the end is Google looks at it and goes, well, okay, this eyewear company, let's say this is Cruise Eyewear, right? They'll say like Cruise Eyewear has written all of this content about myopia
Mhm.
and this eye condition, which I know nothing about, right? But you've written so much stuff about it. You've got, say, 500 articles on the topic. Because you've written so much, you must be an expert, right? Especially because the content quality is good. You're referencing medical sources,
Mhm.
right? For some of the information that you give, you're passing all of these little quality checks. And again, you can set this stuff up where AI does the big bulk of the work. But because you've done all that stuff, And because you've written so much, Google says, because you've written so much, you are an expert, and I'm going to send you even more traffic. I'm going to rank you even higher. I'm going to move you from position number 8 to position number 3, which will like double or triple your traffic.
Mhm.
So as you write more on the topic, then you get even more traffic as a result. You rank, all of your content starts to rank higher, especially if you're doing some smart promotion with that as well. So coming up with topics is like, people don't realize when they really start to sit down and think, what do people ask? What do they care about? What questions do they tend to ask? Right? You could go on Reddit, you could go on Quora, you could go and have a look what questions do they ask. You can just think common sense. Put yourself, what I like to do is I don't use any keyword tools. I put myself in the mind of a customer who knows nothing, right? So in your case, it's like, okay, I just received a diagnosis that I've got this thing called myopia. What am I going to do? First question, what is myopia? Then I find out something about it, right? Or let's say it was my kid that got myopia. So first question, what is myopia? Be like, okay, so myopia in children. And it's like, okay, so what's the best eyewear for myopia? How do I manage myopia long term? And then I find a brand that's like got a special, let's say there's a brand that specializes in glasses for myopia. It's probably, is this making any sense for like what myopia is or not?
No, it is to a degree. Yeah,
To a
yeah,
degree, right?
yeah.
So
It makes
I
sense.
might ask, and I could ask a really dumb question as someone who doesn't really know it and just say, what's the best eyewear for myopia? And it might be like all the eyewear, there's not an eyewear for myopia, but it might be a question that you ask or that people
Yeah,
ask, right?
to get tighter on your research, right? And then
Yeah, yeah. So
after,
when they're
yeah.
figuring it out. So like as an example, like with microphones, right? So you got a microphone on screen here. People will search for like the best microphone for YouTube, the best microphone for Zoom, the best microphone for Microsoft Teams. It's no different, right? It's a microphone. It sounds the same on all of them. You don't need a specialist microphone for any platform. But people search for that stuff. That's how they research.
Mhm.
As you figure that stuff out and you look for these questions or the things that they might do, or like they might compare one brand to another. You keep doing all of these different things. Comparisons is like some of the best ones that we find. It's a really high buyer intent. So take a product that you want to promote, your own product, competitors, and just do comparisons, right? Of product A versus product B. So, you know, with e-commerce clients, like we see huge results from just comparing their product to their competition. Because then when people are comparing, right, you're then part of that conversation. And what about if they're comparing, let's say nobody knows about your product. So let's say you've got Cruise myopia glasses, right? And then there's this competing eyewear company A and competing eyewear company B, right? So let's say Chris's eyewear and John's eyewear, but they've never heard of your eyewear. But people are going out and saying John versus Chris's eyewear, which one is better? Okay.
Mhm.
And now you publish a piece of content on Chris's versus John's eyewear. You do that on your website for Jay's eyewear. And then when they're researching the competition, they didn't even know about you. Now they see
Mhm.
your comparison on your website. You do it, you know, you obviously don't trash the competition, you tell the truth, but then you present your product as an option. And you weren't even in the conversation before. And now all of a sudden you're just piggybacking off
Mhm.
your competition. So, you know, and you can do this as an affiliate, you can do this, you know, as a brand, and it's really, really effective. So there's just so many topics. It's like thousands upon thousands upon thousands. And usually when you go look at your competition and look at how many pages they have, the ones getting millions of visitors, they usually have, you know, tens of thousands of topics, right?
Mhm.
But you can get started, you know, with 50 topics and you can be making a profit on those and driving traffic.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting.
So yeah,
You
so
was you was
that's
blowing my
why
mind with
that's
the
why
level of
AI really helps, right? Because there's a
well,
lot.
yeah, because a lot of that's why I love it. Because a lot of that stuff is just like, because we could be talking about it for hours, crazy. Okay, so with, I mean, look, people's fear of Google, I want to talk about. Last couple of questions now, then we can wrap this up, I think. So we've been at this for a while. So people's fear of Google. So the fact most people blindly go to social media instead, right? We've talked about that. And then you've got SEOs making it complicated. Do you think that's put everybody off? And or has it made it a big opportunity, especially with AI, like we talked about? So just to wrap that up, because there's a lot of ideas that we've talked about around, the SEO side, making it complicated, and also, people
So
going to social media because it's easier. But is that a good thing or a bad thing for
it's
the
it's it's
future?
really
And how
it's
do
really
yeah.
interesting. Like, so I've seen like a very prominent specialist in Google traffic, probably like one of the most prominents coming out and saying, I'm starting a paid advertising agency because I'm so worried about Google traffic in the
Oh, wow.
future with AI. So pivoting the business, moving away from Google traffic. And if you go into Reddit, if you go, into any of the communities around Google traffic and SEO, there's a lot of tension. People are very, very scared, right? And so many people are just saying, I quit. I'm starting a new business. Okay. Um, and I've done this a long time, so I've seen this stuff happen before. It's nothing new, right? This is just a new thing where things are changing quite quickly. Some people are being caught out and people feel uneasy about the future. When people feel uneasy about the future, they go to something which they feel is very, very safe and they look at what is everybody else doing, or everyone else is doing paid ads, so let me just copy them, right? Doesn't mean it's the right thing to do, right? Because was it the right thing to buy crypto in 2021 when everyone else was buying crypto and your grandma was talking about it, your brother was talking about it, the kid on the street was talking about it. Everyone was doing it. It was the worst possible time to buy crypto, right? The best time to buy crypto was when nobody was talking about it and nobody had heard about it, right? Much, much sooner. And so it's similar here. And so I've seen this happen a couple of times before where Google scares everyone away, especially the people who are a bit more lazy or like to kind of manipulate Google, right? It scares them all away. And then it creates this vacuum of lower competition. And it creates this huge opportunity where if you just kind of sit back and look at the cold hard facts and go, actually, no, the Google traffic is more than what it was a year ago. There's more people online, there's more people searching, right? And Google scared away a load of competition at the same time.
Mhm.
So there's more demand than there was a year ago. And now there's less competition, right? In terms of, like businesses going after this, right? Experts like going after this type of traffic. So it's like obvious. It's like it's gonna be easier. There's gonna be just around the corner for those people that stick it out and figure it out, then they're gonna reap the rewards of that. And so I've seen that over and over. And so when these things happen and everyone's hating on Google, I see that as a huge opportunity to really lean in
Mhm.
because essentially it's like you're just waiting it out for everyone else just to get burned out and tired or scared or emotional. Well, you just sit there calmly, just doing the things which work, right? And again, it's like you don't have to make it complicated. It's very, very simple. Google wants quality answers, okay? From real websites. And so give them what they want. Just follow the formula, follow the steps for doing that. And it's that easy, right? It's just make sure that you do that.
Cool. Sounds good. So then I guess the final question is, well, what can people do next to learn more, understand more, implement maybe a lot of the stuff we've talked about? Because I'm sure they'll want to know that, right?
So, I mean, it's certainly a challenge to figure this stuff out. I mean, you know, there's good and bad information out there, and the problem is trying to figure out like what is the actual stuff which really works, what stuff is outdated, what stuff like is just theory. And I would say Google traffic has the most theory and technical BS that doesn't really move the needle, and people spend loads of time working on stuff which doesn't make a difference. So it really helps to follow something which is already proven to work,
Mhm.
right? And just rinse and repeat that. So for example, at AmpiFire, we just have for the promotion side of it, we just do our create, repurpose, distribute strategy. And then, we can also help people with publishing, choosing topics and then publishing that content and making sure it's high quality and putting it on their website. So if there's a business, say, that's doing over $1 million per year, they can go to ampifire.com. They can click a link to book a call with us that's on the page, and they can see if that's a fit. So if you're more established business, you're doing over $1 million a year, then we can like handle the whole thing for you. If you're a smaller company, right, you can get in touch with us to see like how to learn how to do that. And then we do have, an overview, right? If people want to go watch the overview of like all of the steps and kind of like what it involves of what we call like our post promote profit, right? Or yeah, post promote profit, three P's, right? Of just a process that we go through to
Plan,
create plan,
plan.
post promote profit. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
it. Plan.
Pause. Five P's
Yeah,
everywhere. P,
there's
P,
P's
P.
everywhere. So plan, post, promote, profit, right? So
Yeah,
the four
right.
P's. these are like the steps that we go through. And so we can put that link in the chat for people in the description. But the link is do you have it there, Jay? So it's go.amplifier.com
Yeah, I've got it. I can post it.
/traffic playbook.
Yeah.
If people want to go check that out. All right, so just a free session. I just take you through just kind of like how all this stuff works.
Um, I've just got /traffic playbook here. One
Yeah, so
second.
go.amplifier.com
Oh, I
/traffic
see.
playbook. And if anyone wants to throw that in the chat
Yeah.
for us.
Daniel, I don't know if you got that. Normally Daniel's. Oh,
Yeah,
there he is.
got it, yeah.
True to form.
Go.amplifier.com.
Guys like Superman.
Yeah, so go.amplifier.com /traffic playbook. Yeah. And you can join that session. We'll also be dropping out emails and stuff as well for people.
Cool. All right. Any last words, Chris? I think that was very in depth. You know how much I love your in-depth stuff because it just blows my mind, literally. Like a couple of fuses just start to, you know. But but it's really, really good, you know. And thanks for explaining it because it's so important. I mean, if it's the biggest and best traffic source on the planet, like hands down, no question, irrefutable, then knowing how to or dispelling a lot of myths, but then being able to tap into that and knowing how you can do it. And it's it's a lot easier than we think or most people realize. I mean, that's crazy powerful, right? There's no ads needed or anything
Under
like
the
that.
hood, it's like a car. A car's super complicated
Yeah.
in how it works. Okay. Does the average person, can they fix an engine? No, they don't really understand how it works. They might have a little bit of basics. They might understand that it has pistons, it makes a noise, it runs on fuel, but they couldn't really describe in detail how it works. They couldn't build one. They couldn't teach it to someone else, but they can
Yeah.
drive. And it's the same with Google traffic. Under the hood, it's like, yeah, I'm the mechanic. I understand like all of the science underneath it. But in terms of what you do to get the traffic, to get the results, it's pretty straightforward. It's just knowing, what pedals to press, right? What buttons to press, what to actually do. And so, hopefully today is like I've enlightened people that it's a lot simpler than you think. It's just a case of coming and doing the work, planning the content, posting the content, promoting the content, and just making sure it's good stuff and it answers questions that people are searching for. And that's 90, 95% of it, right? And that's going to get you, just doing that will get you a lot of results. You can go away and do that right now.
Cool. Sounds good. All right, guys. Well, hopefully that was helpful for everybody. Um, certainly was for me. It always is when I talk to you about this stuff, Chris. So I appreciate it. And you have the link there, guys, if you want to find out more. And if not, hopefully you took something away from today's
It
session.
almost looks like we're in the same room as well.
It does.
My background in the same studio, but
You're,
we're
you're right here, aren't you?
we're hundreds, if not thousands of miles away from each other.
We are, yeah. Well, Malta and UK, right? Malta and London. So, but yeah, thanks again, Chris. Really
Thanks,
appreciate it. Thank
everyone.
you so much. And
See you
guys,
on the
we'll
next
see
one.
you on the next one. Cheers. Thanks a lot. Bye bye.